Tonight, parents in Ontario are set to get a financial boost.
And what this budget tells us is that we're going to have to keep fighting like hell for our kids.
Why some families say the money for kids announced in today's provincial budget will barely make a dent. And from tourism to vaccines, we break down what else is in the government spending plan.
I can remember just like screaming and crying and just thinking like, okay, I'm gonna die.
And we speak with the woman who survived this highway horror with only minor injuries.
To every young girl watching this broadcast tonight, know you can do absolutely anything.
Plus, as the Raptors take on the Nuggets, an all-female broadcast crew makes history. Good evening, I'm Chris Glover. Thanks for joining us on such an important news day. There's been plenty of reaction rolling in this evening to Ontario's provincial budget unveiled this afternoon by the Doug Ford government. In a moment, we'll look at extra spending to address the pandemic for the healthcare system and small businesses. But we begin tonight with Natalie Collada and what's in the spending plan for parents and families.
Parents are really worn down. Parents are really tired. And what this budget tells us is that we're going to have to keep fighting like hell for our kids.
Toronto mother of three Jessica Lyons saw today's provincial budget and is worried.
Don't get me wrong, $400 checks or $500 checks and a tax credit for childcare is meaningful amounts of money for families, but it's not nearly enough. And it should not essentially be coming from checks written by our kindergartners.
In today's budget, the provincial government doubled the COVID-19 childcare benefit to $400 per child and $500 for each kid with special needs, like Aaron Welch's.
I like the idea of having money available to parents when they need it, but the way it was allocated for me doesn't make a lot of sense.
Both parents say they wish the funds would have been invested in the public school system.
Our children need smaller class sizes to recover from the pandemic and also to stay safe since they won't be able to access vaccines, come September.
If they invested that into schools for occupational therapists and more PPE, making the schools safer, it goes a lot more than just putting $400 and $500 into my bank account.
The budget also allocates a one-time increase in Ontario's childcare tax credit. For the average family relying on daycare, that means an extra $250. But advocates say it's not enough to address the major issue of affordability.
There was a study just last week that showed that Ontario has the highest childcare fees in the country, and they keep going up, much past the rate of inflation.
In other words,
this is a really, really hard time in Ontario for families.
And they say it's unclear if this year's provincial budget will really change that. Natalie Collada, CBC News, Toronto.
In the budget, we also found out it'll likely take Ontario until at least 2029 to balance its books, as the economic fallout from the pandemic is expected to affect the province for years to come. Mike Crawley looks at the billions of dollars set aside to help the province's strained healthcare system.
Oh, those feel really good.
COVID-19 changed just about everything in the world, but not this budget day tradition.
These are the shoes of a finance minister.
With new shoes, the new finance minister, Peter Bethlenfalvy. He becomes the third different minister to deliver the Ford government's 3 budgets. And this budget is dominated by COVID-19.
My job is to ensure we make every resource available to win our battle against the virus.
There's $1 billion allotted to Ontario's vaccination campaign. It's the first time the government has put a price tag on it. Hospitals are getting an extra $1.8 billion in the coming year to cope with any third-wave surge in COVID patients and to handle the backlog of surgeries.
So we will be keeping operating rooms open late into the night because no patient should be left behind without the care they need.
The government is accelerating its plans to build new long-term care homes. The new target, adding more than 20,000 beds in the next 4 years. What's not in the budget? No real increase in education funding and nothing on paid sick days.
This budget doesn't even mention the third wave, let alone help people through it. This was not a budget for the single biggest economic crisis in more than a generation.
The cost of it all? $186 billion in planned spending this year, and a deficit just over $33 billion.
This level of debt, as I've said, is not sustainable in the long term.
How long will Ontario stay in the red? The budget shows 3 different scenarios for getting back to balance depending on economic growth. The most optimistic is 6 years away. Today's budget is just the latest example of how the pandemic has changed pretty much everything. A party that got elected on a promise to cut the size and cost of government plans to keep running deficits until the year 2027, or maybe even longer. Mike Crawley, CBC News, Toronto.
And important budget news for Brampton. Tonight, the government also announcing in the budget it'll fund a new inpatient wing at William Osler's Peel Memorial Hospital. Local groups have long called for a new facility in Brampton to address the strained healthcare system there, which was operating over 100% capacity even before the pandemic began. But critics point out this provincial announcement is just renovating an existing facility, Peel Memorial Hospital. Here's how Mayor Patrick Brown reacted to that criticism.
There's not hospital beds there. There's no emergency. It closes at the end of the workday. It's not a hospital. And so this former decommissioned site, they're building a brand new hospital that's going to be 24/7 with hundreds of hospital beds, with a full emergency department. And so this is great news for our city.
Full details from the province, including a timeline of when it'll be operational, were not provided today, but the mayor says he will join Premier Ford on Friday for an announcement on the plan. Brown also applauded the province for committing to create a medical school with Ryerson University in Brampton. Another major focus of the government's spending plan, supporting a small business community on the verge of collapse. Today, we found out those small business grants doled out last year, they're on offer again, but there's criticism tonight over the thousands of small businesses still not eligible. Lorenda Redicott picks up that part of our budget coverage.
For some tourism operators, business completely ground to a halt with the pandemic. The government is adding $400 million more to help business owners. $100 million is for large tourism operators and attractions. Another $100 million is a new grant for small businesses in that sector.
Targeted specifically at some of the hardest hit businesses.
They'll receive $10,000 to $20,000. They have to show at least a 20% drop in business and have less than 100 employees. Eligible businesses include hotels and motels, travel agencies, amusement and water parks, hunting and fishing camps, and recreational camps, such as children's summer camps.
So as we roll out the vaccines, we recognize small businesses are still struggling.
A small business grant fund that was announced earlier is continuing. Businesses don't need to apply again. They'll automatically receive between $10,000 and $20,000, the same amount they received the first time. The total cost, $1.7 billion.
And let me tell you, I've heard from so many businesses in Ontario that this is the difference between keeping the lights on and turning them off for good.
This grant is critical to the survival of many small businesses.
The Canadian Federation of Independent Business says the problem is many companies don't qualify for the money.
There are many, a long list of small businesses that were gravely impacted by the pandemic, and some of these businesses include dry cleaners, the restaurant supply chain, breweries, printers. There's a whole list of businesses that would fall under this umbrella that should be included as eligible.
She also worries help for the tourism sector might not come soon enough. In this budget, there's also a tax credit coming to encourage Ontarians to travel within the province. It was first announced in the budget last fall, but didn't happen given that the pandemic continued. There's $150 million available. That money won't flow until public health experts advise it's safe to travel. Lorenda Redicott, CBC News, Toronto.
There was lots in the 231-page budget blueprint unveiled today. For more on what was announced and Dwight Drummond's full one-on-one interview with the finance minister, you can head to our website, cbc.ca/Toronto. Now on to the other news of the day, and disturbing story to tell you about. The Toronto Police Homicide Unit is investigating the death of a 2-year-old girl.
The death of a child and investigating it is one of the worst things you can do. Friday, March 19th, our officers responded to a call at a hospital in the city's West End for the death of a child. A 2-year-old girl had been brought into the hospital under medical distress. She succumbed to her injuries and was pronounced deceased in hospital.
A post-mortem revealed the toddler died from blunt force trauma. Police would not confirm the identity of the child or who brought her into the hospital, but police say it's clear this was no accident. In Oshawa, a fire at a row house that left 4 people dead is now being investigated as a potential arson. Durham police put in a request for a search warrant this morning to enter the home.
So there's evidence that was from the scene that prompted our investigators to be led with information that this could potentially be an arson investigation. Our investigators will have to determine, based on any other evidence that we find now, whether it falls in that category of being criminal or not criminal.
The Oshawa home on Olive Avenue went up in flames Monday morning, killing 4 people, including 2 children. Police today said the children were siblings. They haven't released any information on 2 men also found in the home, but did say they were not related to the children. At this point, they're not saying if they have any suspects or what specifically led them to believe this may have been arson. A scary sight on the Gardiner yesterday when a dump truck pushed a Mini Cooper down the expressway. This happened just before 10 a.m. near Lakeshore and Jarvis. Police say the 2 vehicles collided at the ramp for the westbound Gardiner, with the truck pushing the Mini sideways. Passing motorists flagged down the truck driver, who was charged with several driving and commercial motor vehicle offenses. We spoke with the Mini Cooper driver, who's only dealing with minor injuries.
So basically what happened, from what I can remember, is the truck hit me from behind and then kind of pushed me sideways. And then he just kept going. His engine was like right at my window. I can remember just like screaming and crying, and just thinking like, okay, I'm going to die. Like either my car is going to start flipping or he's going to run over me. So I just honestly like started to like hold my hand on my horn and honk as loud as I could. The couple that were behind the truck saw all of the smoke, pulled up in front, saw me crying. I made eye contact with the couple, and then they pulled up about 50 meters or so with their hazard lights on and stopped the truck. So I honestly believe that they saved my life. Extremely grateful that, it ended the way it did and I was able to walk away. It's just truly a miracle. And I can't say enough about Mini Coopers. I do believe that my baby Ruby saved my life.
Miraculous indeed. And Courtney Earhart is a registered nurse. She was on her way to administer vaccines at a homeless shelter when she was hit. Although she's doing okay, her Mini Cooper, it's a write-off. She says the truck driver claimed he did not see her. So she didn't end up administering any vaccines yesterday, but province-wide, Ontario broke a vaccine record. More than 72,000 doses of COVID-19 vaccines were administered on Tuesday. That's the most ever in a single day. In total, more than 1.6 million doses have now been given out, and more than 300,000 people are fully vaccinated. Toronto also hitting a vaccine milestone. More than 400,000 doses have now been administered in the city. And today, the city launched a vaccine equity transportation plan to ensure more vulnerable residents are able to travel safely to clinics.
We know that not everyone has access to their own vehicle. We know that financial mobility and health issues may stop people, in fact, from taking transit or even getting a ride to the vaccination clinic. But those very same people must get vaccinated.
The program is meant to help vulnerable residents 75 and older who have limited transportation options, including not being able to afford transportation to an appointment. The city is extending hours for assisted ride services to help with the pilot. They're also working with multiple partners like iRide, Uber, and the TTC to fund rides. The pilot begins Monday, with services expanding to other demographics over the coming weeks.
With an uptick in racism and violence against Asians in North America, researchers say it's time to revisit what we're telling and teaching our kids about discrimination. I'm Jessica Ng, and I have that story for you coming up.
one system moving away from us, and actually we're going to find our temperatures soaring on Thursday. I'm meteorologist Colette Kennedy. Yes, I mean warmer than today, but rain on the way Thursday night into Friday. I'll talk about all of that coming up.
A man in York Region was arrested today after a string of at least 6 assaults that police believe are hate motivated. In one case, a woman was walking when the suspect ran up behind her and hit her in the back with an object. Police say all of the victims are Asian. With the rise of hate motivated violence, Asian Canadians are facing new challenges, including opening up the conversation of anti-Asian racism with their children. Jessica Ng has that story.
Once upon a time in a land far away.
9-year-old Ashton is reading a book with his mother, Sandra Ha. She says she's struggled with how to talk to her son about current events, like last week's shootings at 3 Atlanta area spas that left 8 dead, most of whom were Asian women.
We had to talk about, how do you defend yourself, which is unfortunate.
Ha says her son saw her deal with anti-Asian discrimination directly at his own school. The Korean Canadian says kids taunted her, calling her a Chinese grandma.
It was very jarring. I had no idea how to deal with that situation with my child.
She's not the only one. Teacher Neri Juhong says she's experiencing the same issues with her students and her 2 kids.
I've heard teachers through other friends, their own kids, saying things like, oh, you know, the shooting in Atlanta happened because they wanted to avoid the coronavirus.
While anti-Asian discrimination may be difficult to talk about, researchers say having those conversations with kids may be the key to breaking down racism and stopping it for the next generation.
Especially for young people before age 16, during the primary socialization period of time. Those negative experiences could damage their trust in others,
potentially leading to long-term damage with self-esteem and social isolation. Carrie Wu's team recently submitted research findings that show
native-born Asian Canadians, they perceive more discrimination. And then the experience of discrimination has a stronger impact on their mental health.
Wu says creating more open dialogues about anti-Asian racism at home and at school will help destigmatize the subject so kids can identify and challenge it. Ha agrees.
If we don't continue to speak out against these kinds of actions and we don't have a proper way of talking to our kids about these things, they will continue to happen.
Jessica Ng, CBC News, Toronto.
All right, popping outside for a live look at Toronto's harbor, and we've been spotting quite a few lightning flashes throughout this evening, though nothing flashing on the screen right there. Overall, a nice night and fairly warm temperatures, but it's following kind of a mixed bag today. Colette Kennedy is tracking all of it for us. Colette, the weather just couldn't pick a lane today.
Hey, thanks, Chris. Yeah, this has been one of these days, you know, kind of something for everyone in the weather department. Sunshine at times, cloud cover, pop-up rain showers, or even a little bit of lightning strikes we were seeing on the radar, too. So a little of everything out there. And we're really going to be getting into a continuing clearing trend in the next couple of hours. So once we get past midnight and then moving through, we'll see the skies clearing. And even though it's a weak cold front that's going through, it's really not having an impact on our temperatures. In fact, they're going to get even warmer. So clearing overnight, the temperatures really soar, even milder than today for Thursday, but late Thursday. So think Thursday night into Friday, early part of Friday, we are looking at more significant and widespread rain that's going to be moving in, a little heavier at times too, 20 to 40 millimeters. So Friday morning's commute is going to be a wet one, so it is going to be a slower one. A look at our daytime highs from today. Look at this, between Windsor at 21, London, Hamilton 20, 21 at St. Catharines, and then over towards Kingston and Ottawa, just 10 degrees. A little cooler, winds off the lake for Kingston, and seeing temperatures still into that cooler air for Ottawa. But Toronto rounded up to 17 degrees for the high. And yes, I did say it's going to get even milder for tomorrow. So there's the clearing we get behind the first system. That means we have quite a bit of sun to begin the day tomorrow, then increase in cloudiness. And then as we get towards the evening, we're going to find the rain starting in southwestern Ontario, working its way north of Lake Ontario, too, up into cottage country. And like I said, kind of heavy at times. So periods of rain. You can see when we get into the yellows and orange colors here on the contours, more significant, and some colder air meeting it to the north, so getting into some mixed precipitation there. That will move out by midday on Friday, and as it leaves the GTA, we're going to see the winds kick up a little bit as it starts to push in, and then they'll be with us until it moves away about midday. So again, it's not just wet, it's actually windy on Friday morning too. A look at what we have overnight tonight then for southwestern Ontario, getting into this nice clearing and your winds easing. Temperatures 6-7 degrees for lows. Highs tomorrow. The timing really crucial here with that rain coming in. That's why I've got these temperatures down a little bit, because there'll be more cloud cover ahead of that system. If it holds off a little more, those temperatures are going to go up a bit. Now, overnight, very mild around the Golden Horseshoe. And speaking of it, look at that, upper teens, even 20 degrees for St. Catharines for tomorrow. And then the system moves in. And with this one, it is going to be a cooler daytime high on Friday. And in fact, you'll notice those temperatures are going to be cooling down through the period after this spike tomorrow. Chris.
All right, sounds good. Thanks, Colette.
The weather is brought to you by Trane, the most reliable heating and cooling brand. We test, so it runs. It's hard to stop a train.
I'm Ismail Alpha, host of Metro Morning. Well, coming up on tomorrow's program, it is the day after the provincial budget. We'll break down what it means for you. That'll include a conversation with the Minister of Finance. Join me weekdays from 5:30 till 8:30 for Metro Morning on CBC Radio 1.
History was made at the Toronto Raptors game tonight, and it didn't happen on the court. For the first time in NBA history, an all-female broadcasting team called the game.
We are thrilled to be here tonight, and very quickly, to every young girl watching this broadcast tonight, we hope you love seeing the five of us do this. Know you can do absolutely anything, and please dream big.
A great message there from Kate Burness, and Raptors 905 analyst Amy Audibert joined her to host the broadcast. CBC Sports contributor Megan McPeak handling the play-by-play alongside national women's team star Kia Nurse. And TSN host and reporter Kayla Gray was the sideline reporter. The Raps announced the broadcast on International Women's Day, and the team saying they hope this leads to more recognition of the many roles that women play in pro sports. As for the game itself, the Raps won their first in 9 games, beating the Nuggets 135 to 111. Fantastic. And that is our show for you tonight. Thanks so much for joining us. Dwight Drummond has your next local newscast tomorrow at 6, and I'll see you back here tomorrow night at 11. Have a great night.